Hello Morrisville, my name is Giselle Rodriguez and I am with the Public Works Department of the town of Morrisville. And we are here today to answer some of the common questions that we've heard about the slurry paver technology that has been used in our community. And Chuck is here to help me out through that.
Okay, I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Giselle. I'm Chuck Ingram with Slurry Pavers. We are based in Richmond, Virginia. We're currently in town doing some pavement preservation work using a Slurry Seal application on some of the town streets in Morrisville.
The town of Morrisville maintains 55 miles of streets. The streets are maintained based on the conditions that they are. So they are evaluated every 2 years, and based on the condition of the street, we select the appropriate technology to maintain them in optimal condition. So based on the recent pavement condition survey that was completed, we have assessed the streets and determined the best technology to apply. Very often, a mill and overlay or repaving of the street is the common technology that is used. However, it is a technology that is high dollar cost. So as we find ways to stretch out the taxpayers' dollars, we find technologies that we can apply to keep our roads in great condition and that we can probably stretch them out as much as we can. That's when we come to try to transition our program from a reactive program to a more proactive way of maintaining our streets. So we have decided to incorporate preservation practices that allows us to keep the roads at a very high rating, providing the best performance possible. And that is where Slurry Seal comes into play. It is a preservation technology that allows us to keep the roads at a very high rating and providing the best performance possible. So by using this technology, we are able to touch 5 times more streets that we could do with regular mill and overlay or repaving of the streets, allowing us to touch and increase the performance of more streets in Morrisville. So one of the reasons why we have elected to go with the preservation practice is not only because it allows us to touch more streets, but it allows us to have a better performance of the street system overall.
And as Giselle just mentioned, the movement from a mill and fill or simply repaving everything kind of a philosophy, the pavement preservation philosophy is one that honestly we all employ at home. Some of you may well have a driveway that has a sealer on it. It's the same philosophy. You're protecting the investment in the pavement that you have in your home. You might have a deck that you spend your evenings on to preserve the materials built in your wooden decks. We often stain them. So, we're already in the mode of preserving things. We change the oil in our vehicles on a regular basis. So we have an investment in something, and what we're trying to do is extend that serviceable life in the investment that we've already made. And it's not uncommon for many areas, particularly areas that have not employed a slurry seal treatment as preventive maintenance on streets. For those that see it for the first time, they often wonder, why doesn't this look like a new hot mix or paved road? By design, slurry was developed back in the 30s actually in Europe. It was designed back then as a preservation treatment to existing macadam roads, as they called them. And just the whole thinking was to put a thin a treatment on top of a pavement to keep the life of the pavement underneath still serviceable. So what we have is some aggregate that's built into the mix that by design has some surface friction to it. And it's meant to provide a safe surface that will in time smooth out and soon resemble an asphalt pavement. But the texture of the slurry seal that's been installed is by design. So you do have a pavement that was well thought out in design process, and the aggregates that we use are sized properly for the application sites. Much of the residential work that we're doing currently in Morrisville is slower moving traffic, so we don't need a larger size aggregate for maximum skid resistance per se. So we do use an aggregate size in residential areas and parking lot areas that's a much smaller and much more friendly surface to ride on. And as I said a moment ago about the different size aggregates or the different size rock that we can use in a slurry seal application, there are different degrees of surface texture that is often left behind in a slurry job. Some of the questions that we get from time to time is that why are some of the rocks either in our gutter pans or some of them are laying on the surface of the road? Is this road deteriorating? Well, by design, the slurry seal has that aggregate that's not 100% embedded in the mix for the skid resistant properties that I mentioned. So it's part of the natural curing process that with subsequent traffic during the initial phase after application, there may be some light shedding of aggregate on the surface. And that's nothing to be alarmed of, as that, again, it's just part of the process, which leads to the eventual smoothing out of the surface. Now, the comparison between the initial slurry application surface and your asphalt surface that you're more accustomed to is due to the fact that when the hot mix asphalt is placed, they use a big steel wheel roller that embeds all of the rock that's in their mix, initially smoothing out that pavement. So that's why you're seeing that smooth pavement to start with, is that the fact that the new layer is being compacted by their design. By our design, we're just trying to build in a little bit of surface friction and a little bit of safety in the surface. Rest assured, though, it will be smoothing out in due time. And as I said, as part of that curing process, along with the traffic helping to eventually smooth out the surface, oftentimes ask, well, how long does this transition phase take? And I always say that slurry seal, unlike hot mix asphalt, never looks as good on day 1 as it will look on day 21. So as time goes on, in the next several weeks, I think you'll see a fairly significant transition from what now is a very textured surface, 3 weeks, 4 weeks down the road. It all depends on the volumes of traffic, how long it takes to finally smooth out. But I'm comfortable telling you that when inside a month, that things will appear quite differently than what they did right after the installation. And the goal of any slurry application is that once that final cure has happened and once your traffic has worn the material smoother, that we hope it to soon take on the appearance of a hot mix asphalt road, in that all the colors will blend together, any seams or imperfections in the surface often get kneaded together with subsequent traffic. So within that month time frame, and it will continue to improve beyond that 1 month time frame. And just a quick snippet, I do this all the time with towns and cities that are not familiar with the mix. And I get questions sometimes about, well, why did you put this material on our road? We had a perfectly smooth asphalt road to start with. Oftentimes, we are going back in the same neighborhoods years later and putting the same material down that they had previously had installed. So they had been tricked, if you will, into thinking that they had plant mix surface roads, when in fact it was a slurry seal application that had smoothed out very significantly over the course of time. And tagging on to the length of time that it takes to smooth out and finally cure. The slurry seal will continue to smooth out over time. Again, a month from installation, it's going to look totally different. 3 months from installation, it's going to look even better. So in the following several months after application, slurry seals will generally just start to blend any surface imperfections together. Their coloration will blend together and become uniform. So I anticipate fully that within the next 3 to 4 months after installation that the slurry seal will take on a really attractive appearance for you. In wrapping up a project, just when you see the paving teams leave your neighborhood does not necessarily mean that the project is done. There is some cleanup that's typically required. Some of you may notice that at cross intersections that there has been some loose aggregate, some fine aggregate that was spread across the intersection to allow immediate crossing of traffic. All of those materials that are now currently loose and are going to be removed. We typically like to wait a couple of weeks after installation, particularly during the hot weather that we're experiencing now. The road is still very tender. But we will get vacuum trucks in to get all of the loose debris out of the gutter pans, out of the intersections. Anything that had been inadvertently left behind by the crew will be cleaned up during the cleanup operation. And as well is that tagging on to the end of any project, there's typically a small punch list of work. And that will be identified very soon. There will be some remedial work, there will be some touch-up work. Residents will be notified all over again on when and if you're going to be impacted by this. But then again, realize that any road that might have to be reapplied, we're going to go back through this traffic curing, this time curing, this hardening up, this smoothing out, and the final cleanup again. So just to make the job end up on a note that it was intended to be, there's always inadvertently some punch list items that need to be taken care of, and those are part of the plan going forward.
Thank you, Chuck, for helping us answer some of the questions that we have heard from the community. And we hope that this information has answered some of the questions that you've had. We also would like to thank you for your cooperation and your patience as we move through this construction project. We understand that it may have inconvenienced you. You may have had to park somewhere else. Maybe you had to arrange some things throughout the day, and it may have interrupted your routine a little bit. So we certainly appreciate your cooperation and patience through this. We also appreciate your patience as we allow the product to cure over time and allow it to smooth out to be able to reach its optimum performance. If you happen to have any further questions that we have not been able to answer to you on this video, please contact our Public Works Department at 919-463-7070 or visit our website and let us hear your question, and we will try to provide you a response and address your concerns. Also, please be sure to check our website for additional information on the Slurry Paver technology. And there's also some videos in there that may help also provide you a visual of the installation of the product and even answer some further questions that we may not have covered today. Thank you so much as we move towards protecting and preserving one of the largest assets that Morrisville has, and that is the town streets, which touches every citizen, every commuter, and every visitor into our town. And it is our desire to be sure to preserve it for a long time to come.